My name is Daniel Wynn, and by day I invest in sports cards, but by night I make videos about investing in sports cards. I am the great curator. Join me on my journey to break even in the hobby that we all love.
Hello everyone, I'm the Great Curator and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time visiting, thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Just like I say in my videos, the purpose of me making this is strictly educational. I don't sell anything on this channel or anything like that. This is just my fun, creative way of kind of talking about issues and topics in the hobby that I'm interested in and that I think are important to kind of start these discussions within the community. It's intended for people who are new to the hobby, where you can get some value from these videos and hopefully you can avoid some of the common mistakes that we all make. And just, if you're a seasoned veteran of the hobby, this is just to give you guys a little bit of different perspective, which hopefully you guys get some value out of, okay? The message that I want to push in all my videos is a message of positivity. I really want people to emphasize that this hobby is built on the community. So I want everybody to just have a positive mindset. So many people that come into this hobby, they have a profit first mentality where they want to get the best deals possible. They want to squeeze out the best profits that they can at the expense of others. And sometimes that leads to negativity. That leads to bad actors. And I just don't like to see that, guys. I think that the value of our cards is based off of the strength of our community. So therefore, we have to emphasize the level of positivity between all of us, all of the fellow collectors. Be nice, be kind, be respectful, help grow the hobby, help strengthen the community, and that's the best way that we can elevate the value of our cards, okay? I want to kind of I refer to myself as a gentleman investor, so I want other people out there to have this mindset where they want to be gentlemen investors or lady investors, where we elevate the civility of the hobby, and that's the best way that we can help our community grow. Okay, so that's the message that I like to push. I'm gonna try to make this message a little bit more concise in all my videos, but that's basically it, guys. That's the purpose and intention of these videos. Okay, so if you guys get any value out of this video, please like, please subscribe, please share these videos. This really encourages me. It gives me the feedback and encouragement that I need to motivate me to continue to make these videos. And as I continue to make more of these videos, I will get better. I will improve the quality of my videos, which will hopefully also improve the quality of the content, which will benefit you guys, okay? So thank you for that. Okay, so now that that intro is out of the way, let me talk about today's topic, which I think is very interesting, which is surely to be controversial. And I'll probably get a lot of pushback on this, but I feel comfortable enough to have this discussion with you guys, okay? And hopefully, I don't get canceled or anything like that, okay? But please, just hear me out, okay? The topic of this video, as you can see in the title, is going to be why I believe we should shift away from solely relying on eBay comps to determine the value of our cards, okay? Let me say that again. Why I personally believe that we should shift away from solely using eBay comps to determine the value of our cards, okay? I'm gonna give you guys some background about how we got to this point. I'm gonna give you my analysis on why I think that method is flawed, and I'm gonna give you guys my suggestions on some alternative solutions about how we can move forward, okay? All right, so with that being said, let me give you guys a little bit of background. If you're new to the hobby and you don't know why or you don't know what's going on, let me tell you about how things work. Somehow, some way, the market or the hobby or the community has determined that eBay is the sole determining factor on how to value cards. And I'll use this as an example because this is what I have on hand here, this Kobe rookie card, right? To determine the fair value of this card, we have to look on eBay and see what it last sold for, and whatever it last sold for, that's the value of this card. So let's just say this card here, for the example, is the last sold is $500. That's how much this card is worth. And it changes. If the next last sold is $400, that's how much this card is worth, right? Somehow along the lines, this happened before I got back into the hobby, that is the mindset that we all have, that eBay is the sole determining factor for how we value cards. So I asked myself, why? Okay, because that doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Why is eBay the sole determining factor? And I came up with two reasons. Number one is it's convenient, it's easy, okay? We all have the eBay app on our phone. We can all pull up sale comparables, sale comps, and we can in a matter of seconds, and we can determine what the last sold comp is for. So that is why we do it, because it is easy. eBay has a platform that allows us to do that in a matter of seconds. There's no other platform that tracks the data from all the other transactions that happen all over the world or in the community, in the hobby. Only eBay does that. So that is why we go off of eBay, because it's convenient. Okay, I understand that. The second reason I think that people determine the price of this is, well, let me just say this. These are collectible, guys. These are collectibles, okay? So does it make sense that one day this can be worth $500 and the next day that it can be worth $400? Does that make sense at all? Like what factors influence this card, okay? Other than the last sold, right? So we have to acknowledge that these are collectibles and they trade on a secondary market, so that's what adjusts the price, right? But what is it like why are you okay spending $500 one day and then maybe a week later you're spending $300? Why do you do that, right? So my theory is that the reason people go off comps is because it allows us to have what they call an anchor in our mind of what that card is valued at. Most people don't know what this card is. Unless you're very familiar with a certain card, most people don't know what the card is, so they want to rely on data points or what is the fair market value of a card. And the only way to do that is eBay right now. And when you get that number, I'll just use this $500 example again. That number becomes an anchor point in your mind. It's psychological. So in your mind, you think, okay, this card is worth $500. So you don't want to pay any more than $500 for that card, because that is what it last sold for, right? And if you get this card for $400, in your mind, you got a better deal. It's all psychological. If you buy this card for $550, in your mind, you overpaid for it because of that anchor point that eBay establishes, all right? It's psychological. You don't want to overpay, you don't want to overpay, you always want to get a deal. And I don't know what the reason behind that, but that's what it is. Like it's an anchor point, guys. Maybe you don't want to feel like the other person's making money off of you, okay? Maybe you don't want to feel like you overpaid. Maybe you want to feel like you got a great deal. Whatever it is, that number is arbitrary. That last sold comparable is totally arbitrary because it just becomes an anchor point in your mind that gives you that gives you a rationale to justify whatever you pay for this card. All right? Think about it that way. Think about it for real. Whatever you see on eBay, that is what you use as your anchor point in your mind to justify how you feel when you buy a card. All right? That's what I truly believe. Okay. So that is a little bit of background, right? To go further into that, I think that another reason that we rely on eBay is because of how we view cards as an asset class. So when people get into investing in cards, okay, and let's face it, everybody says investing. Nobody says collecting anymore. Everybody says investing in cards. We view these, we justify the amount of money that we spend on these things based on our belief that we're investing our money into an asset that will appreciate in value, right? So we view cards as stocks. That's how generally I believe most people view cards. We want to trade and transact cards like as if they were stocks. So if you go on any platform like Robinhood, for example, and you want to buy Apple stock, for example, you are only going to pay whatever that stock sells for at that time. If the stock sells for $250, you're not going to pay $300 for an Apple stock. You want to pay what that price is at that time, okay? Similar to whatever the last sold for on eBay, you want to pay for this card at whatever it last sold for. We view cards like stocks. All the apps that track the value of cards, Card Ladder, Market Movers, they present it in a way that makes it look like stocks with their graphs, the percentage that it increases and decreases. They present it as if they were like stocks, right? So we view this as, that's our analogy that we use, that these cards are like trading like stocks. The problem there, guys, that I see with that way of thinking is that stocks are, number one, they're very heavily regulated. They're restricted on certain platforms, and they're organized in a way where that price is a true determining factor of fair market value. let me just kind of get into this really quickly. I don't want to get too deep into this. I'm not super knowledgeable about it, but stocks are traded on certain platforms, and they're organized in certain ways. S&P 500, NASDAQ, and then there's only certain platforms where you can buy the stocks. Robinhood, E-Trade, Ameritrade, certain brokerage accounts that you can use to get these stocks, right? And they have the structure, the organization to pool all the data that they can to determine the fair market value of stocks, like hundreds of thousands of transactions each day, computer servers running all this analysis, all these algorithms where they determine based off of demand, based off of orders that they get, that whatever the price of a stock is that day, that's what it is. And you see that it doesn't really fluctuate that much. It just goes a couple percentage every day. It just goes up and down a few percentage points. Okay, it doesn't really fluctuate that much. And if there's any event that happens in the stock market that causes a huge spike in the price, the regulating bodies will shut down trades of that stock to stabilize it, okay, until things calm down. We don't have that same structure or organization with cards. So that's why it's not a good comparison to view cards like stocks, where whatever the price is at that point, that's what we need to pay. Okay, that's this flawed mentality. A better analogy that I would argue would be that cards trade more like real estate. Okay, and hear me out here. If a house sells on your neighborhood for a certain price, and somebody sells their house in the same neighborhood, they're going to price it higher than whatever that last house sold for. So let's just say the house sold for $100,000. The next door neighbor that wants to sell their house, they're probably going to price it at like $125,000 because they want to get a higher sale than the last sale comparable. Okay, and they will price it on the market, and if it sits there for a while, they may adjust the price and lower it to sell it faster. If it sits on the market and there are many people who want to buy that house, they will either pay the full price, they will bid higher price, or they will negotiate with the seller. And that's really how we transact with cards. Whatever a card last sells for, the next person will try to price it higher. That's why you see like people who put buy it now prices on eBay, they're like 3, 4, 5 times as much as the last sale comp, but they'll open it up to offers. That's why you see people at card shows, whatever the last sale price, they'll put a higher price on it because they anticipate negotiations. That's really how we transact with cards, but we don't think about it that way, okay? And a house, when it sells, it almost never sells at the same price that the previous house sells for. That's not how that market works, okay, guys? So that's how I that would be a better analogy or a comparison that I would use to view how we should price cards, okay? Compared to real estate versus stocks. But I think that stocks are a little bit easier for people to understand, and maybe it's sexier, you want to say. So that's how we view it. But there's just a flawed way of thinking because it's not the same. All right, it's not the same. So that is a little bit of background about how we got to the point where we use eBay to determine pricing. So let me tell you why I think that we should shift away from solely relying on eBay. Okay. Number one is, I've talked about this before, but eBay is not 100% reliable. The way that the platform is structured, there's too much variations in how an auction can end in the pricing in terms of the time it ends, who bids, who can get on the platform in time, things like that. We know that there's shill bidding going on. We know that sometimes people buy it now for whatever reason, but they don't pay, things like that. So eBay is not 100% reliable. I would say it's like 90% reliable, okay? But there is a level of variation that can manipulate the price, okay? So that's the first point of why we should not solely rely on eBay, okay? Number two, eBay is not the only platform where cards transact, okay? This card can sell 100 times on eBay, but I promise you it probably sells 1,000 times on other platforms, okay? And that is the biggest problem that we have, is that we don't acknowledge other sale comparables. For example, do we acknowledge a sale that happened on Facebook Marketplace or MySlabs or OfferUp or even at a card show? If you're at a table and you're negotiating for this card and the table right next to you has it and they sell it at a different price, do you acknowledge that price and say that's the new comparable? No, nobody does that, okay? Nobody acknowledges any other sale, okay, maybe golden auctions or something like that, but for the most part, nobody acknowledges any sale that happens off of eBay. So my question is why? Why do we not do that? Okay. And I think it's just because in our mind, we've been trained to use eBay as the sole data point to determine the fair market value of the price when we know that it happened, that there are transactions off of eBay. And the problem is that if we're only relying on eBay, we don't get the whole picture. Okay, so my question to you guys, I'll pose this hypothetical question. If you have 100 data points on eBay that tells you what the last sales were on this card, okay, but you have 1,000, let's just say you have 300 data points on all the other platforms, what would be the better way to determine the fair market value of this card? Is it not the more information we get, the better informed we can become when we determine the value? We live in an information age, okay, where data is everything. All these companies that are collecting data, they collect it because that is the best way for them to come up with to analyze whatever they're trying to do, right? So why would we not apply that logic with cards? Why would we not try to get as much data points from every single platform we can to determine the fair market value of a card? The answer is we don't have the capabilities of doing that right now, okay? Card Ladder is starting to take other platforms into account. I know they do MySlabs, I know they do golden auctions, things like that, so that is there. But really, we're not at a point yet where anybody has come up with a way to organize all that data. And because we're not there yet, we don't even acknowledge it, okay? But that is the problem. That is a flawed way of thinking, is that we don't acknowledge the other ways. If we did, we would be able to we would probably elevate the value of our cards if we were able to acknowledge all that data point, but we don't, okay? But my point is that the more data we have, the better, the tighter the analysis can be, where we can determine the fair market value of the card, okay? And then the last point I'll make, which I think I want to be the takeaway of this entire video of why we should shift away from solely relying on eBay, is because, again, guys, we don't treat this as a secondary market, all right? We treat it as like a retail market, where like they're stocks basically, okay? When a card comes out from the manufacturer and it sells at retail, that's like the IPO, okay? But then when it starts trading on the secondary market, we want to treat it like stocks, all right? The problem is that this is a collectible market and it's not organized the same way stocks are. We transact on many different platforms where it's unregulated, unorganized, right? So we can't value cards that way. The true way to determine the price of a card, and this is the takeaway that I want you guys to get from this video, is that it's determined by the buyer and seller, okay? By supply and demand, by the buyer and seller. The seller determines the price of the card. Let me say that again, okay? Because I know I'm gonna get pushback. This is gonna be a controversial statement, but the seller determines the price of the card, guys. This is my card. I own this. I can ask whatever I want for it. If I want to ask $1 million for this card, that's my price, guys. You can't say anything about it, all right? But before I get the hate mail, on the flip side of that, the buyer, the customer, the consumer, they determine the value of the cards, okay? Think about that. I determine the price of the card as the seller, but the person buying this card, or the person that I want to buy this card, they determine the value of the card. I can ask $1 million for this card. That doesn't mean I'm gonna get it, guys, okay? Somebody comes up to me and they may offer me $300 and I may take that, okay? Or we may negotiate on the price and meet somewhere, okay? But that is how these cards are, that is how the pricing on these cards is determined, all right? By the buyer and the seller. The seller determines the price, the buyer determines the value of the cards. That's how we transact. Similar to real estate. All right, the seller of a house determines the value of the house, and then whoever buys it, they determine the value. Okay, did I say that right? The seller determines the sale price, the list price, and then the buyer determines the value, whatever they're willing to pay. That is how you determine the fair market value of cards. Okay, that is the takeaway that I want you guys to get from this video. The seller determines the price, but the buyer determines the value, and it's up to negotiation to determine what is the fair price. Not eBay. Not eBay. eBay does not determine the price of this, okay? eBay is only a data point that you can use as an anchor if you want to have it somewhere in your mind to justify whatever you're going to pay for this card. But eBay does not determine the fair market value. It is up to negotiations. Okay, so now that I kind of made my point there, let me offer you guys some solutions on what I think would help do this, okay? And then I didn't talk about this in the beginning, but this is, I'll circle back to this in the end, okay? Let me tell you guys the solutions, okay, of what I would suggest. We have to get to a point where we get away from quoting comps to the seller, and we have to focus on negotiations, okay? So going back to what I just said, the seller determines the price, but the buyer determines the value, and it's up to negotiations to determine the fair market value of this card, the fair market price of this card, okay? The price of this card, the end price, whatever, okay? It's up to negotiations. So that's the mindset that I want you guys to have when you approach people at shows or online or whatever, is that don't quote comps to these people. They don't care, okay? That's not their sale. They're not gonna bend over backwards for that. Focus on the negotiations, okay? Focus on the art of the deal. Watch my video on that where I talk about how to have a conversation with a seller or a buyer, how to talk about how to identify each party's interest, their cost basis versus what they want to do with the card, okay? Have a discussion, have a fair, polite, respectful negotiations where you can come to an understanding, come to a middle ground on what each person is willing to buy or sell the card for, okay? Focus on the cost basis. Use comps as use comps as data points that you can refer to, but not the absolute authority. And then here's something that you also have to consider too. Focus on the availability of the card. All right. Just because this card sold on eBay for whatever, like $500, if it's not available for $500 on eBay, then that's not the fair price, right? This happens with a lot of rare cards, a lot of low pops. You have to take into consideration what it last sold for, but you also have to take into consideration the availability of the card. If it's rare, if they're not for sale, or whatever they're available for is way high than what you're negotiating for, you have to take that into consideration, okay? Don't walk into a table or a local card store and say, well, it last sold on eBay for $500. I want to get it at the same price. They're going to laugh at you guys. All right. You have to take into consideration where the card is available. All right. If somebody's selling this at a show for $500, or let's just say $1,000, okay, but it's available on eBay for $600, I think that the decision is very easy right there. Go buy it on eBay. Okay. But if you want to buy it at a show, you have to negotiate, okay? But just take into account the availability of the card. So again, my solution, guys, from shifting away from eBay comps is to focus on negotiations. When you have the conversations, when you enter into negotiation with the seller, do not quote comps. Do not say, well, last sold on eBay is this price. Can you work with me, whatever? Don't do that. Have a conversation, okay? Ask them what they value the card at, okay? Try to find out what their cost basis on the card at, okay? And then determine what you have in your mind of what you think is a fair value of the card. And then just have a discussion about it. That is the best way that we can shift away from eBay comps. Now, let me tell you why I made this video and why I'm suggesting this. When we are stuck on eBay comps, okay, when we know that there are transactions happening on different platforms, it creates a bottleneck or a stall or conflict or friction, whatever you want to describe it, in the transaction process. And this is what has happened over the last several months. When card prices were very high back in February and prices started going down, people couldn't transact. They couldn't buy cards, they couldn't sell cards. They just wanted to trade because everybody was relying off of eBay comps, okay? And I have my own theories on why the prices on eBay were dropping so much, but we'll talk about it in a different video, but they were solely relying on eBay comps to determine the value of these cards. And when a seller's, their cost basis on this is $1,000 and on eBay they're selling for $400, how are you going to transact? How are you going to do any deals like that, guys? Okay? So that is what created such a stall for several months of this year, and it really hurt the hobby. I think it's leveled out since then. I think that things are smoothed over and we're starting to build back up. But that is the the main drawback and why I want to make a video like this is because when we rely on one platform to determine the value of these cards, when I would argue that it's not reliable, when I would argue that it doesn't take into account all the other transactions out there, and it's not the best way to determine value, then we have these times in the hobby where we get stuck. And I don't like that. I do a lot of shows, and oftentimes I'll see at the shows where they complain that nobody's buying, everybody's selling too high, there's not enough transactions going on, everybody wants to trade, things like that. If we get away from solely relying on eBay comps, that will change our mindset, and it will free up our ability to transact, our ability to get things moving, our ability to make deals. And that will, if we can do that, if we can free up the log jam, then the hobby will start rolling again, guys. And you will see the prices will stabilize, the prices will grow, and it will just create a healthier market. That's what I truly believe, okay, guys? Let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know comments. Okay, please try to keep them positive or respectful. At least you can disagree with me, but just be respectful. Nobody has time for negativity or anything like that. Okay, but that's what I believe, guys. Okay, so again, let me just recap real quickly here. I believe that we should shift away from solely relying on eBay comps to determine the value of cards because it's not reliable, because it doesn't take into account all the data points that are out there, all the other transactions. I believe a better alternative until there is a platform or an app or somebody that can accurately keep track of all the transactions and pull them together to determine a fair market value of the price of the cards. I think a better way of kind of going about it would be to focus on negotiations, okay, and take all these other things into consideration, but not solely rely on eBay as the end-all, be-all authority on determining the value of a card. One last thing I'll add to that is I do believe that Card Ladder is moving towards this. I use Card Ladder. I think it's a great app. So I think that they're moving there, but they're not there yet. Okay, but they're moving there and determining like the fair market value using different data points and things like that. Okay, let me know what you guys think if you guys use Card Ladder or the other one, Market Movers or anything like that. Okay, guys. But that's the summary of this video. Takeaway, guys. The biggest takeaways I want you to take from this is, number one, don't solely rely on eBay comps to determine the fair market value of the cards. It's just not an accurate way, okay? Use real estate as a comparison, as an analogy on how you should view how cards should be priced. Understand that the seller determines the price of a card, but the buyer determines the value, and they have to meet in the middle somewhere. And the better way to approach deals is through negotiations, not quoting comps. Through negotiations, not quoting comps. Okay, guys? Long video. I have a lot to say about this. You don't have to agree with me, but hopefully you guys got some value out of this. Hopefully it got you kind of thinking a little bit, and you can continue this discussion online or in your groups or your community. If you got any type of value out of this, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Please like, please subscribe, please share this video. I really want this discussion to be community wide. I want people to start talking about this because I think it will help out the hobby a lot. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. This is just my opinion for whatever it's worth, but that's what I believe. So hopefully you guys got some value out of this video. If you did, please like, please subscribe, please share. Thank you all for your support. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.